Seth Mosley here in the studio with Lzzy Hale of the band Halestorm. Thank you so much for stopping by and being on the podcast with us.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome, and what a cool place you have here.
Well, y'all are killing it. So appreciate you making the time. As we always say on our show, this is about giving back. This is about teaching people the things that we've learned from and mistakes and successes. And you guys are certainly having a lot in the success department lately. So looking forward to hearing your stories. So
thank you, man. Yeah, no, it's been crazy. I feel like we've lived a couple different lifetimes and somehow still here. And we have a lot of these moments now where we're just like, guys, like we're still doing it. Like we're still a band. And it's kind of like a real thing now, you know, we get to call this a career, and I get to travel the world doing what I love with the people that I love most. I mean, it's, I guess that's the definition of living the dream, maybe.
Totally, yes. Well, I want to dive into that, but I want to rewind all the way back.
Uh-oh.
What was the first moment that music impacted you and that you knew you had to do it? It was like your obsession.
I'd have to say it was probably the first day that we actually played out as Halestorm, because before then, music was kind of always a part of my family. My dad's a bass player. He was in a couple bands back in the 70s, 80s that, didn't work out, and ended up, married, had normal life, kids. He was a mechanic, but there was always stuff around. They actually gave the drum kit to me. I ended up having it in my room. My brother and I had an adjoined closet growing up, and so he would sneak through the closet and destroy the drum kit. So finally I was like, just have it. So I always tell little bro, like, you're probably playing drums because of me. But anyway, so like we would play together, little bro and I, but it wasn't until the summer of 97, specifically August 9th, 97, and at the Schuylkill County Fair in central Pennsylvania, just hay bale tossing, and there's and there was a talent show that we ended up entering ourselves in there, and we ended up winning third place. Well, I say winning third place. We got third place. But we lost to the tap dancing cowgirl, who was much cuter than we were.
Okay.
But
makes sense.
It's interesting because what we ended up doing is that we weren't really planning on starting a band. On the way to this show, little bro in his 10-year-old wisdom turns to me and he's like, Lzzy, we can't just go up there using our names. We can't just be Lzzy and RJ. I'm like, well, why not? He's like, because we got to be a band. We need a band name. And, so this is typical big sister, little brother, in the family van going to the talent show that we entered ourselves in. He's getting a little annoying. So I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. What do you want to call it? And he's like, well, what about Halestorm? Like, that'll do. That'll do for today. So we went up there and we introduced ourselves as Halestorm, and we played this 5-minute song. I had my Casio keyboard and my brother had his drum kit, and a song called "Love Is Power" that just the first song we wrote together. And I remember finishing the performance and just shaking and turning to little bro and be like, do you want to do this again? Like, maybe mom knows another place we could play. And fast forward to that night, like I still remember what we were eating for dinner. We had like this kind of shake and bake chicken that my mom would always do with this like Italian breadcrumbs and mashed potatoes. And
I love that it's shake and bake.
Yeah, dude, remember that? It's my mom's specialty.
Yeah.
And so like we were eating dinner and I'm telling mom and dad, I'm like, this was just incredible. And I can't wait to do this again. Like maybe like we could go down the street at the coffee house, something. Yeah. And mom's like, sure, like I'll try to find some places for you to play. And my little brother with like a mouthful of mashed potatoes, like, oh, I still get to play drums with you, right? And I'm like, yeah, man, like we're a band, So like it came full circle in one day. And from then on, everything else came second. Like I was the annoying kid in middle school that was like peddling cassette tapes of our songs, getting sent to the principal's office because you're not supposed to be selling things in the hallway. There's things that you just do. And I started dressing differently and trying to figure out our band logo, like old school on our, my school notepads and stuff. So
you used to like write it with whiteout on the backpack. Was that a thing for you?
With whiteout on the, I had the black backpack with like the meshing or whatever.
I had the same
with the whiteout.
thing.
Yeah, it would stay for a little while, then it would start flake off. You'd have to
reapply.
Absolutely.
Always reapply. So if I'm doing my math right, that was 21 years ago.
Yep. Absolutely, yeah. Our band can now legally drink in the U.S.
They can. I love it. Man, that's crazy. So like if that was phase one of the band starting,
Yeah.
10-year-old little brother talent show, what was phase two? Like how long was it before you could actually kind of call it a career?
Wow. I think we're still doing that, honestly. Well, I mean, it's interesting because you go through a couple different things. So when we started playing out, we would play literally anywhere and everywhere they'd let us play, in bowling alleys, coffee houses where you'd have to be quieter than the cappuccino machine, which is very difficult for little brother. But that, we would do like youth lock-ins and like anywhere they'd let us play. We started in like the basement of the Crocodile Rock in Allentown, which ended up we just kept moving up, to each room until we got to like the stage opening up for Kitty or something like that. And so like, the hustle was real. We actually flyered, which for kids who don't know what actual flyering is, this was before social media, where we'd have to go to Kinko's and make a bunch of flyers and then beg like pizza places to let us put it up in the thing. Put it on the windows. In the window and all that. Had Dad in the band for a second. He was our bass player. And then, and a summer goes by and, Dad, oh, it's cool. Dad's in the band. Dad's a bass player. It's awesome. And we're like, had to sit Dad down. We're like, Dad, we're going to look for people our own age. And, had a couple different members, rotating in and out. And it was interesting because it was always little bro and I against the world. When I say tunnel vision, it was more obsession and everything was just all about the band, up until, it still is. It's still like just such a huge part of our lives. But it was hard to find other members that felt that way.
And I want to hear about that because the first phase of your life, you had two other members that are no longer a part of the band. Maybe talk about that and the struggle to find people who are kind of on the same page as you were.
Absolutely. It's hard. It's hard when you're kids, and I suppose it'd probably be even harder when you are becoming an adult and you have all these tugs of the norm, as we call them, just like, okay, get a real job. What are you doing? And when we were kids, one of our first guitar players was this 16-year-old guitar player. And he was awesome. He loved Slash. Like we all loved the same kind of music, and he was really stoked to be in the band. But his mom gave me kind of an ultimatum. Like right when we first met, she kind of sat me down. She said, well, if you guys aren't signed within 6 months, I'm taking him out of the band. And, so if you can imagine me, a 15-year-old trying to tell a mother, like, that's not how this works. Like, we might not even get signed, that's not the goal. The goal is to keep this thing moving and whatever's next, And we did all sorts of stuff. Like, during that whole period, we had this, we built this rotating upside down drum kit, kind of Tommy Lee style, but out of steel parts, old Ford seat belts, an old kit. We bolted it in, strapped my little brother in, Velcro on his kick drum. And then it was like perfectly bent with a tractor axle, right? Yeah. So I grew up on a 20-acre farm. I should have mentioned that. Where there's a lot of stuff going, all around there. And so, but the goal for that was, how do we get on the front page of the local paper? Yeah. And so it was because we would do weird stuff like that. And thankfully, my parents had this childish, reckless, abandoned approach to parenting and let us do let's try to figure out how to do that. I'm like, all right, cool.
So whose idea was that? Like
that was little bro.
So he's like, okay, let's do an upside down spinning around drum kit.
Yeah, it went counterclockwise. And I ended up writing a song called Time Man just so that we could have a song that went with something that went counterclockwise. It was a very freeing time for songwriting. But yeah, so like, then we had one guitar player in and then it's funny because he ended up lying for us after his 6 months was, up. I guess in his mom's eyes, he told her that he had quit, but he would still do gigs with us. And finally, like, she found out and all hell broke loose. And then we would have like a couple friends in and out, like just to help us do gigs because we were gigging at this point. We had shows, but then the next two permanent members came in. They were two friends and a guitar player and bass player, and they were in for about a year and a half, maybe almost 2, and just kind of turned to me one day and like, you know what? This is really hard for not a whole lot of pay, and we could do this in some other cover band and actually make a living. So we're going to leave. And, you have to kind of respect that because I thought this was before, it was before we ever got signed. We maybe had some interest, here or there, but we were playing shows. But there was no way that I could guarantee like a timeline for them. And it's interesting because now I think about all the stuff that we went through after we really got involved in the industry and think, oh man, those guys would have never made it. So if you can't handle it at that infant stage, it's like it only gets more intense.
Yeah. And I really want to hone in on this because you're hitting on something that's not only key for being in a band, but just for surviving the industry period is just having the right people around you.
Well, we would have, so then again, fast forward to 2003 and met Joe. Joe came in, one of the first guitar players that had absolutely no ego whatsoever about what he played. He actually wanted to learn the song that we were jamming to, so I taught him the song, and he would try to do melody lines and mimic some of my voice and all of this and just make it into like parts instead of just noodling the whole time, which is kind of what I was used to with guitar players. Like, yep, that's not a solo part, but that's fine. Yeah. So he came in and like we instantly hit it off and started hanging out and then kind of made it official. And then we met Josh around the same time. We would all go to see Josh play in his old band. And our bass player Josh, and we're like, how do we steal him? How do we steal him? And so we basically told him, we're like, okay, so we just need a temporary bass player. Like, what are your gigs like? Basically, we were like, our prowess, because we were doing a lot of shows. Sure. And we were doing like 250 dates on our own back then. It's like we were gigging all the time.
As an independent artist.
Yeah. So we basically told Josh, like, well, how many gigs do you have? He's like, well, this and this. I'm like, well, we have more and we can give you beer, and so he's like, okay, cool. So like a couple months go by, he's still our temporary bass player, and finally like we got him really wasted one night. We're coming home from like a gig in Maryland, and he turns to me, he's like, Liz, I'm gonna have to call my best friend up and tell him I'm at his band because I really want to be in this band. Would you have me? And I'm like, dude, that was the plan all along.
That was the whole thing. Yeah.
But once we locked in with Joe and Josh, like all hell broke loose, and we had never had anybody in our band that had this like-minded, just forward movement. We used to call it rock forward. Like, okay, rock forward every day. Like, how are we going to push this, a little further? And so we started doing it. So it was just it's interesting because I feel like one of our biggest accomplishments as a band is keeping that four-piece together. We've been the same four members for 16 years now and haven't killed each other yet, which is not a small feat.
and not only that, it sounds like you guys still all really like each other.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
That's not a common thing either. I mean, you hear just the typical story, right? Like, I just now saw the Queen Bohemian Rhapsody movie. It's like, okay, it's the same story every band goes through. It's like egos clash and somebody gets mad and they break up and the singer walks out. How have you guys managed to kind of keep the thing together, to keep the vibe, keep your friendships over those 16 years?
I think that in a lot of ways you have to treat it like it's a marriage. So I'm married to 3 boys and one of them is my brother.
Yeah.
It's very weird.
Very complicated
situation. But no, I mean, you have to give that respect. And for me, I think I attest a lot of the underlining to being a family first. Like my brother and I have been doing this 21 years together. Our vibe kind of bleeds through to everybody else, and the other two might as well be related. But even in our crew, whereas you kind of know how to fight and not throw the whole thing away, because it's like, okay, we're brother and sister. We're never not going to be brother and sister, no matter what happens. So same thing with the band. It's like, okay, we're not going to like give up after what, like
right.
We've been through all this stuff, and that's going to be the thing. Come on, it's fine. So I don't know. We have a lot of respect for each other, and there's a lot of things that we'll bring up, a lot, where it's like that whole stop and smell the rose, like, isn't this great, guys? Holy crap. We're like, we just opened up for Judas Priest in Auckland, New Zealand, about a week or so ago. I don't even know what time it is. Yeah. But like those little moments where you're like, guys, we're like still doing it, and we're still a band, and we're still excited about music, and we're still excited about playing live and seeing how far we can take this thing. And as far as musician wise, like, none of us are absolute virtuosos. There's always going to be some better singer than me, or a better guitar player, better drummer, but there's something about the four of us coming together doing what each of us does best with each other. And, for me, I think there's that aspect too, where it's like my little brother has always been able to do something that I can't, and likewise, and same thing with the other two. It's like you just recognize, what we were talking about before, those kind of 4 pillars of Halestorm that hold the whole thing together, and without one, everything would absolutely crumble to the ground. So
that's a good way to put it. And I think, if we're looking at this from the outside in, like finding the formula for a perfect band, sounds like one piece of that is just like open communication, treating it like a family. Gratitude. Sounds like I'm hearing a lot about gratitude, just like being thankful for like, okay, we're doing this. I would wager to say that even though you've accomplished all this, there are probably still things that you're like, man, we still want to do this, and we want to do this, and we want to do this. But the fact that you're stopping to say, okay, look how far we've come.
Yeah,
that's huge. So if there was anything else that sort of adds up to that formula for a perfect band, what is it in your guys' case? Like, what are the 4 pillars? Like, why that?
I mean, it's interesting because it's not just the musicianship, it is because it's about the music and we enjoy playing together. But we do things like these little exercises, even in live. So we're a live band. We don't use any tracks, no click, nothing. It's the 4 of us. We plug in and we play for better or worse. And I think that keeps it spicy too, because we'll have these sections that we know we're going to kind of go off and kind of jam together. It's kind of like a freeform jazz, but in hard rock. But we don't always know how we're going to get out of it. So it's training and listening to each other and riding each other's wave. And I think that we started doing it just because it was fun, and it was nerve-wracking because we're like, you could make a moment with an audience, or it could be a total train wreck. But that's up to you 4. Yeah. That's up to us listening to each other and having each person take a little time and then seeing if we can build it up together or drop it together. So those little things have made it awesome. But it's also, I don't know, like we hang out a lot, and we make sure that we take the time, to do things together that isn't just on stage. And it's funny because I feel like everyone always thinks that like, well, that could never happen with my band. Like, we're just not that lucky. I think that it's work. It's a relationship. And what you were saying too about communication, that's huge, because if you're living 2 feet from each other on whatever monstrosity you're touring in, like we toured for years in an old RV. We went through so many fan belts, like alternators. We blew up the engine. We ran that thing into the ground. But even then, it's like there's glory in doing it. I think we say that a lot, where it's like, not to go way back in time, but I remembered this thing that happened with little bro and I on a way to one of our, first gigs, after Halestorm. We already have the name. Okay, now we're going to a show. And we're stuck in traffic, and little bro turns to me. He's like, where do you think all these people are going? And I'm like, I don't know, man, to work, school. And he's like, yeah, but we're going to a gig. Like, you know what? You're right. So like, even though we're stuck in traffic and it's boring or whatever, but same thing with like when the stuff breaks down, or we used to do this thing. We ended up writing a song called Here's to Us about this, but we used to do this thing when we were making our first record. Our A&R guy got fired, and we couldn't find a producer to do anything. And like all these people around us were getting dropped from the label, and we're like, well, it's been a good run, guys. So we would go down. We were living in the Oakwoods apartments in Burbank, and just the 4 of us in a room together. And there was this small little convenience store, just kind of attached to it. We'd go down and buy like the cheapest bottle of champagne, like $2 champagne, and bring it back up and just cheers to the low times. You have to cheers to like when you break down, because that's the stuff that you remember, and that just means that you're working. It's
so
not
y'all
about
were in a 1-bedroom apartment then?
Pretty much, yeah. There was like a pull-out couch, I think, but
that's that in and of itself. A lot of people aren't willing to pay their dues like
and
that. So
and you have those moments where like, dude, are you gonna like leave your underwear on the floor again?
Yeah.
You have those moments, but that doesn't mean that you throw the whole band away, like, because that's the stuff that you laugh at later. You're like, remember you like that was an issue.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, and then you get into the industry, and we're very lucky because we have an awesome team, and we've been on the same label for I feel like it's been like 12 years or something like that. And same management team, same booking agency, our amazing A&R guy. But like there are a lot of people when we were coming up that wouldn't realize that like we're close and we talk, and they would do the whole divide and conquer thing. Like we would like hang out with you like, hey, like we would talk about it later. Like, hey, yeah, so-and-so said that I could like do something without you, or you're not that good and whatever. And I'm just like, so we would laugh about it because we're like, well, we talk, and these people are trying to pull this thing that we know it's special, whatever it is. And so you just kind of respect that special thing and you don't let anything get in the way.
Yeah. That's awesome. So are there any other big challenges that you maybe have had to sort of band together to overcome in your journey specifically?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest struggle that we've had to fight for and win for the most part, is keeping that same initial flame, that same fire kind of out in front of you and convincing everybody around you that is where to go. Go toward the excitement. Like when we're creating music, and especially in this industry where we do have a lot of people around us and that have opinions and we respect their opinions and everything. But initially it comes down to you fighting for what you know is right and the music that you want to create and that you want to put out there, because it's kind of that, that deathbed scenario. It's like, if I die tomorrow, I want to make sure that I'm proud of what I put out. And so, this last record in particularly, we didn't show anybody any demos whatsoever. Nobody on our team heard anything, which was very new to them. We freaked everybody out a little bit. But that was kind of our way of just kind of protecting what we were creating, and it ended up working out great in the end. But I remember it being a struggle to fight for yourself, to fight for your right to be yourself, in this industry where, yes, everybody wants a hit. Yes, everybody wants a crossover thing. Everybody wants this and that. All we really want to do is be able to play for the rest of our lives and keep this thing. Again, our goal has always been what's next. And it turns out you never run out of dreams. So you just keep adding more stuff to the bucket list.
Yeah, totally. And that is unusual. So you guys didn't show any demos? Like,
no,
did you pretty much just
which usually we always have, like in the many years we've been on the same label and management, everybody hears like it's like, oh, hey, I have this like idea. This is the first draft. And everyone's like, oh, cool. I like that chorus, blah, blah, blah. And
so they're hearing like 40 things. And by the time you make it down to the record, they've heard all the things. And and not with every single song, but for the most part, everyone's kind of involved from the moment that you're like, hey, maybe we should start thinking about making a record, to the end. And so with this record, it was interesting because we had written a bunch of songs and we had sent them in and whatever, and I was like, oh yeah, they're great. But for us, it seemed like we were trying to do our first record ×2, and here's something that we've done before, and it wasn't really inspiring. So we ended up throwing all of those songs away, went into the studio with Nick Raskulinecz with almost nothing but a few like ideas, because we just write all the time. So there's always some ideas. But we went in and day one kind of started from scratch. So we were in a room literally the size of this room, set up our amps, and just started jamming. Like every day Nick would be like, all right, who's got a riff? Who's got an idea? Do you got a melody line? Something, and we would start there and build up the songs, but we were recording the songs as they were being written. So there's this whole, for me, there was this like human element that we hadn't really done before, but we were super nervous about showing anybody anything, because by the time we would get it done, you'd have so many people in the pie and so many people giving you their opinion of something that they're not involved in yet. So we're like, okay, let's just wait till the end where we get it to where we want it, and then we'll fly everybody out here. And it was very hard to keep everything from everybody, because you'd get calls, you're like, you sure you can't just show me anything? I'm like, no, we said we weren't, and we don't have to, so just hold on. And it just makes everyone nervous. But like in the end, you end up, like I said, you fight for what you think is right and work really hard to do it. And then no matter what happens, like we could have made this record and nobody could have cared, and we still would like it and tour it on it. And that's the bottom line with there. And then, but it's a pleasant surprise that it's been doing well. And we got nominated for a Grammy for our first single. And it's like, it's cool. I don't know. With those moments, like,
Jesus, guys, we're still doing this. It's neat. So
we were just at the Grammys a few months ago and got to see you present on the stage. So I'm sure like those type of situations, I just think in my mind, like you've played these stages opening up for Judas Priest, but like when you're presenting at the Grammys, that's probably it's like a whole nother level of nerve wracking.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely. Because, yes, you're there representing your genre, but this is where all the cool kids hang out.
Right,
It's
totally.
like, and you didn't get into this because you were cool. You got into this because you weren't cool. So yeah, absolutely nerve wracking. And also like thinking about it this way, I can stand up in front of a crowd of 60,000 people and sing my songs. No problem.
Yeah.
Ask me to get up in front of a podium and like on a stage, it's like
just speaking.
Oh, so I was just one of those things where I'm like, just don't make a fool out of yourself. But
Hey,
it was
you
so
did
neat.
great. You did great.
It was interesting because the night before we went to the nominations party and everybody gets a medal because we're all 5
Special.
and and
they're nice medals though.
They're really nice medals.
I think they were made by
but everyone's like wearing them at this party, so we all like know who's nominated. So I would go around and be like, "Hey, so what category?" And a couple people, I was like, "Oh, I'm presenting your category. I hope you win." And those people ended up winning that I had met. So when they would come up and be like, "Oh," I would get so excited because I'm like, "Wait, I know you," you know. And then you're handing them this trophy, which like what I love about the pre-tell too is that there's all these genres, these people that have been working their entire lives for this. And so to hand them this and they look at you with this like shock, but also like tears, you just can't help but be like, oh, congrats, man. Cool.
Yeah, it's
so yeah,
it's a big deal.
Fun.
Yeah, it's a big deal to even be there in the first place and to be nominated. So I'd love to talk a little bit about, I don't know if you think of how much you think about this and maybe you don't think about it at all, but like one of my personal missions in the music business is to empower women to have a bigger place in it. Like, why do we not have more women producers, and why do we not have more women engineers and mixers? And you've got Sylvia Massey and some other people in the rock space, but largely it's a pretty male dominated thing, and in the rock space, that's really no exception.
Absolutely.
So how have you gone about thinking about that or maybe overcoming that, or I don't even know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Like there's these, as far as personally in my life, there's been these like 3 tiers of like in the beginning, I grew up in a household where like we didn't talk about the glass ceiling. It was always like, yeah, dude, absolutely. Anything that you want, you can totally do. And so my naivete actually ended up, I would use that as a weapon because you would go to these gigs and you'd be carrying in your guitar or your instrument or whatever. And I would always get this. I would be like, oh man, my girlfriend never carries my equipment. That's awesome. And then they would go and see, and they would then see that I'm in the band and they see me play and they would go, oh, I'm so sorry. I just like assumed you were the girlfriend or somewhere because, you don't see that. Yeah. So we ended up kind of using that to our advantage. And after a little while of that happening, would start the show up just a cappella with me because no one was expecting that. And so there's that aspect to it. Then when we started shopping to labels, and we shopped to like everybody, we did so many showcases for whoever, a lot of those labels aren't here anymore. Sure. But we would get told the same thing. It's like, okay, we love what you do. You guys are consistent. You rock. But we don't know what to do with you because there's already a girl on this radio station, and that's kind of the token. You can't have more than one.
One girl.
Yeah. And it's not really a thing right now. It's not like on trend at the moment. And so then you have that defiance and, where it's like, well, that's ridiculous. I'm going to do it anyway, Yeah. And so that pushes you through to now there's this third tier that I'm in right now where I'm able to be on stage and literally look at these girls in the audience, be like, yeah, I did this. That means that absolutely you can too. Like I want to be that North Star because I had to kind of reach back to my parents' generation for a couple of my North Stars. We're like, okay, it's possible. Sure. I think it's important as girls to push through. Like if you're a female, you want to be a female producer or engineer or lighting girl or, front of house, we see a lot of them on the road, but I always think it's amazing the girls that push through all of that because other girls really, I think that it's important for them to see that it's possible instead of there being like, if one of the difference with me was like I grew up with a lot of dude bands. Like my dad introduced me to Black Sabbath and Alice Cooper and Dio and Cinderella. I loved all the 80s bands. And then my mom was like, well, if you're going to get serious about this rock thing, like here's Heart and Janis Joplin and Pat Benatar. Yeah. And then something kind of switched as far as like, especially vocally with me, because I was singing a lot like Axl Rose or I was trying to be Dio or whatever. And then when I heard Ann Wilson sing, I'm like, oh, I didn't know a girl could sound like that. That's awesome. So it just made that gap a little bit, it's a little less far away. Like it's, a little easier to jump over, when you're like, oh, I'm already a girl. This is cool. I could totally do this. So I love being on that other side of that now. And then especially at the moment, just in the times we're living in, what we've noticed in the crowd as far as like girls in rock music, it used to be 60-40, like male to female. And it's completely turned on its head because I think that girls just want to rage right now. So it's been awesome to see these women just owning these heavier moments in hard rock. And you're kind of witnessing firsthand that music is absolutely genderless. There's there's no right or wrong to it. It's a matter of like, are you doing it or not?
Right, So that's so awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. As we're kind of rounding out the conversation, going back to this perfect formula for a band, part of that is fans. I mean, that's what it all comes back to. And what I love about rock and always have is it seems like the most loyal fans out of like any genre.
Oh, absolutely.
So how do you go about as a band thinking about like retaining your fans and expanding your existing fan base?
We made the decision a long time ago because you can go either way. You can either be the band with mystique that doesn't ever talk to anybody and hardly does any interviews, and there's that works for some band. And we did the absolute opposite. We consider ourselves extremely accessible and kind of go out of our way to talk with people and thank God for social media because that makes it really easy.
You guys do your socials all yourself?
Yeah, we do it all ourselves. Every couple of years, like somebody at the label will be like, hey, we can assign Janet on this. And it was like, no, because as soon as I start doing that, then I'm just going to be lost in the world. And so for better or worse, you're stuck with me.
No, I love it.
But
I think that's
4 in the morning, Lzzy, maybe don't take too seriously, but but yeah, check my timeline, make sure it's the right hours for brain. But yeah, no, it's interesting. I think there's that. We talk a lot about not being an asshole. Like, I know that sounds super simple, but a lot of the gigs that we got early on and a lot of the relationships that we still have in the industry weren't necessarily based on the fact that we had a lot of talent. There was the choice between, okay, well, I can have this band play my venue that maybe they're worth a bunch of tickets, but I know they're going to trash the dressing room. They're going to ask for more money. They're going to leave their van in the alleyway that I said not to park in. Or I can have these Halestorm kids who I know maybe they don't draw as many tickets as this other band, but they're going to be super nice people and gracious and just have a good time on stage, And I'm quoting this nearly directly from a promoter that used to book us at the Croc Rock in Allentown, which was a place that we kind of like cut our teeth, which is no longer anymore. But he would, put us in like opening up for some nationals and, opening up for like POD or Kitty at the time and he recently told me that. He's like, you know what? I booked you. And I'm like, because we were really good. He's like, no, not at all. No, because you guys were nice. And I'm like, that's cool. And he's like, I hope you know that you probably ended up doing that to a lot of people coming up in the scene. And obviously we've worked really hard to be good musicians now too. But I think that early on that was a huge point too. And it's like, it's just, life is kind of too short to be an asshole. And it's like, it's just rock and roll. It's not, don't take yourself too seriously, I guess.
I love that. Never underestimate the power of just what being a nice person can do. That's such good advice to leave people with. I want to hear a little bit about your new song Vicious and the music video for that. We're going to actually do a little bit of a deep dive after the interview on planning a music video out, just because I'm fascinated by that. There's fight scenes in it. You obviously had to learn to do all that stuff. So if you're cool to dive into that, we're going to do that in our deep dive segment. Is that cool with you?
Absolutely. I'm totally down.
Awesome. So if people want to find out about that, they can just go to madeitmusic.com, go to the show notes, just search Lzzy Hale. You'll find it there. It'll be linked right there. But are you ready for the lightning round?
Lightning round.
Who is someone you haven't collaborated with that you would like to still?
Ann Wilson, actually, from Heart, because that's one of my idols that I have yet to really do anything with. We've met before, but haven't collaborated yet.
It's out there in the ether now. Favorite city to play?
Flint, Michigan, actually, because of the machine shop.
Okay.
Only because of the machine shop.
All right. I love it. Most embarrassing stage moment?
Oh, man. There was the first time we ever played Cleveland. So I grew up on Spinal Tap, right? So like,
love it.
There's that scene, hello, Cleveland,
Yeah.
you know, where's the stage? So I had built this up in my mind. First time we play Cleveland, I get to do the Spinal Tap moment. And I open my mouth and I say Chicago. And the entire crowd just started booing. It was like, yeah, I messed it up. I can never get that moment again.
Well, you do 250 shows a year. I mean, you have to have done that more than that once. If you've only done it once, then
technically I've only really done it once. I have, however, completely forgotten where I am, and then just don't say the city. You're just kind of like,
hello,
Nebraska.
all of you.
Yeah. Hey, everybody.
I love that. Hey, well, you got a pretty good track record for that then.
Yeah, right. Good.
Strangest sound that you guys have ever put on a record?
Oh, there's two of them, actually, real quick. Both on the last record, on Vicious. One is scissors as a percussion instrument on Heart of Novocaine.
Like
and
literally recorded scissors?
Recorded in it. They were like these rusty scissors that we found, and this was one of our producer's ideas. He's like, and I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, hear that? That'd be great on a song. And so like the song we were working on, he's like, let me just try it. So he literally for like 3 minutes was just
so it's like a shaker sound.
It's like
almost?
it's like a percussive, like it's very strange because it doesn't sound like a shaker, but it does that kind of same kind of slide.
Can you hear, where is it in the song? Can we hear it? Or
you can hear it mostly at because we brought it up in the last chorus of Heart of Novocaine.
Okay.
Those are scissors, not actual percussion.
We got to listen to that. That's awesome.
Then there's one more thing. It's called the Astral Whip. Have you heard of this?
No.
It looks like a vacuum cleaner hose. And you plug it into a pedal, and the more you whip it around, the higher, like the harder you whip it, the higher the pitch. So we put it in. It's only there for a moment in our single "Uncomfortable" right before the second chorus. It's just, if you hear something that sounds like a Wookiee, just like thing, that's it. Yeah, but like I don't know why we're just like, yeah, that's part of the beauty of being in the studio. It's like, just sure, let's try it. We can always erase it, but let's try it.
Lzzy, anything you want to leave the audience with? Anything you're working on that you're really excited about?
Honestly, you know, if I can just kind of issue a mass thank you to not just you guys and like just providing outlet to talk about music, but to all the people that have enabled us to do what we love every single day. It's like, it still blows my mind. And you know, we just got back from Japan. We did this run. It was Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and just got to experience so many cool things. And I don't know, I think that the bottom line is that it kind of takes a village, I guess, to raise a band. It's not just about us and being goofballs on stage and pummeling through with our music thing. It's everybody. We're all in this thing together. So I appreciate you guys enabling me to live my dream. It's cool.
It's awesome. Social media? What's the handle?
Oh,
there so
yeah.
can,
Well, for me personally, I'm just at Lzzy Hale on Twitter. I'm official Lzzy Hale on Instagram. Through that, you can find other things with me. Snapchat, I don't recommend, but I am Lzzy Hale on that too. Or halestormrocks.com.
Cool.
And it's just, if you Google Halestorm, Hale Storm, you can find just about everything. If you want to laugh, Google Halestorm 1999. You can see the rotating drum kit and me with a guitar.
I'm going to look that up.
Good 3 a.m. fodder right there.
We'll link, if it's on YouTube, we'll put it in the show notes and we'll link to it so people can see it. Lzzy, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
No, thanks for having me.
Hey, what's up? Thanks for hanging out on this YouTube video with us. In case you didn't know, this is from the Made It in Music podcast, Season 2. We have a ton of awesome guests that come on the show, all music business professionals, to share their knowledge and experience with you. So if you want to subscribe to not miss any future episodes, hit that subscribe button on YouTube and you'll be notified about all of them. And in case you didn't know, we do a deep dive for every episode where we go really in depth on a certain topic from each podcast episode. So sign up right here to get free unlimited access to all of those deep dives from our podcast. And if you want to watch another Made It in Music podcast video, click here.